So in this Victorian purpose-built flat first floor, we have an area of dampness on an external wall. This is the second bedroom. The dampness is characterized by surface calcium sulfate salts. There's some mould in the corner by the metal pulley. There's a significant amount of condensation on the window, despite it being 2 o'clock in the afternoon and not especially cold day. It was wet outside, it was relatively warm. It doesn't seem to have any significant brown staining, suggesting that water isn't coming in from the outside, but it is entirely possible there's a little bit just down at the base. Have a look at my recording during the time of the survey.
So this is behind the chair, got more mould there. These are calcium sulfate salts. I don't see any brown, but probably the light is too much to be able to see it properly. Possibly a little brown staining there. May have been damp proofed. I doubt it though. There's a bit of brown staining there.
The significance of brown staining is if water is penetrating through building material, which is what is suspected here, then it would bring colour from the brick or timber. Now, when you do get brown staining under window sills, it's often caused by condensation forming on the window, dripping down. Here I'm measuring the dampness in the wall with a radio frequency damp meter. I encourage owners to buy one. They're very inexpensive, currently about £17. They're better than professional ones, which cost about £500.
So, the render seems to be in reasonable order. There is some dampness coming off the top there, but I don't think it's affecting your wall. You've got a large lump of metal drawing heat out. Bit of water is coming down there. That should be sealed, but I don't think it's enough. I think it's heat loss.
I looked for defects on the outside. There were no major defects, but some of the water is pouring off the platform onto the wall. This could cause heat loss, increasing the risk of condensation. Here we're looking at the thermal image. This time of day it can be difficult to detect any major signs of heat loss. My suspicion is that these metal supports are being held up by metal within the wall that's creating heat loss. That heat loss exacerbates the risk of condensation, but it's not the cause of the condensation per se.
So we know immediately that vapor's issues. Interesting, it's the metal of this pulley system that will be making it worse. Got condensation there as well. And pipe work, I would say this is an old chimney breast, but we're going to have a look outside. And then we have a bathroom nearby. So the bathroom has a vent, which is good. It stays on, which is excellent. Oh, no, the bathroom doesn't have a vent. The bathroom has a boiler which is on. No vent. Oh, well, there is a vent there. But it's going through a cloak. Oh, it's going right up the top.
These inline fans are normally quite powerful and should provide sufficient ventilation for this bathroom. There is another bathroom which wasn't working particularly, the vent wasn't working particularly well. There's also no kitchen extractor fan ducted outside. But the main issue turned out to be the condenser dryer.
This is a condensation dryer, but it's really humid. It feels terribly humid. So you can just feel a whoosh of humidity coming from there. Wonder what brand it is.
I measured the relative humidity around the condenser dryer and noted that it's 67% relative humidity, but 29.5 degrees centigrade. Now, to understand why that is significant, you have to consider that the warmer it is, the more moisture can be held in air as vapor. Relative humidity is a measure of air's capacity to hold moisture. In summertime, the air can hold a significant amount more moisture as vapor than it can in wintertime. As the air warms up in summer, we get the humidity from the rivers and Lake Sea evaporating into the air, and although it's lovely and warm, it can be relative humidity. At night, the temperature can drop down to perhaps even only as little as 19 degrees centigrade and form dew outside. That's because it's reached 100% relative humidity or saturation, and the air can no longer hold moisture. This comes out as dew, and the temperature that the condensation forms at is known as the dew point. Dew point is very significant, and it's a very useful way of determining the amount of moisture in air. Dew point is an exact proxy for the vapor in the air. If the internal air has a higher dew point than the external air, then there's insufficient ventilation and a risk of condensation and mould. So the best thing to do is to bring down the internal dew point by increasing the ventilation or dehumidification or a mixture of the two. Now, I created this calculator that measures the dew point by simply taking the relative humidity and the temperature. In this case, 29.5 degrees centigrade and 67% relative humidity equates to a dew point of 22.7. That is, that if the temperature drops below 22.7, you'll get condensation. Clearly, the internal temperature of walls is lower than 22.7, and therefore there's a risk of condensation and mould. The humidity from the dryer will disperse around the property through diffusion. By the time it reaches the wall, it will be diluted, but it's still going to be impacting on the vapor within the property. I'm showing my own data logger above an Aga, and here you see that it becomes very warm, but I'm able to bring down the vapor levels by running a dehumidifier. Typically run a dehumidifier at night because I've got insufficient ventilation from the kitchen, so I make up for it by taking water out of the air with a dehumidifier, and that is what I encourage you to do if you have insufficient ventilation. Here there is insufficient ventilation from the kitchen as well as the dryer. You should supplement the ventilation with a dehumidifier. Apologies for using this graphic, but it does illustrate how vapor can diffuse around a property. You have to appreciate that mould only grows where relative humidity is high, above 85% for long periods of time. So it's a direct result of vapor coming from something, and in this case it's primarily from drying clothes and from the kitchen, possibly made worse by respiration and from the bathroom.